Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to install a pyrometer in the RAM so I can monitor my EGTs. So we're going to try to make it work with my iDash from Banks. So what we had to do, we had to buy a few different cables to make it all work. The first cable we had to buy was a 4-channel analog. And also we had to buy this B-bus starter kit, which this plugs into the back of this monitor. So here's the part number for the B-bus. And it gives you a pretty lengthy owner's manual on both of them and how to connect all this together, which I've currently already did. So this also gives you 3 more inputs. So you could monitor stuff like oil pressure or air temp or whatever else you can find that you want to monitor in your car. So first step we had to do was we put the thermocoupler in my EGR block-off plate, which is pretty simple. I just took off those 2 bolts and screwed the plate in. So now we have the plug. All we got to do now is run the rest of the cable through the firewall and then up into my gauge pod, which I'm going to suction cup to the window. So let's get started on routing this wire. Alright, so now we're going to go for the wire install. And I see that little black hole. I think that's the best routing to put this wiring harness through the firewall. So we're going to go ahead and take this out, try to fit it through, drill a hole, and then we'll catch back up with you once we get the wire through. So that was pretty easy. What we did was take a 15mm socket, unscrewed those 2 bolts, and it's actually just a plate, a plastic plate. But I took a unibit, drilled it out to fit the plug. So now all we're going to do is feed this cord through here and then connect it to the temp sensor. So we'll be back. Alright, so what I did was I decided to keep my loom inside because I didn't really want it getting wet. So I tucked it up underneath the firewall. As you can see, I zip tied it to a duct, so hopefully it stays clean and then keeps the engine bay clean without this big, hopefully you can see it, this big wire loom, since I'm not really sure what else I'm going to hook up at the moment. But we do have our 1 module wire headed out to the firewall, so I'll show you where it's plugged into. So I ran it up along the firewall and I plugged it into my EGT sensor, the coupling right there. So all I got to do now is do a little zip ties along this side, and it's a nice clean install, and hopefully we'll have no issues with it, but I'll get back with you in the short. So on these rams it's pretty easy. I just pulled the weather stripping, popped this back panel off, and I fed my 2 wires down in here for a clean install. So it's nice tucked away. Can't see any of the big looms, so it should be good. So we'll go ahead and snap this on and show you the finished product. So here's the gauge pod installed. I have a suction cup to the window, just a single pod, so comes in handy. It's worked out pretty well since I don't have a tuner. But the channel 1 on the bottom, on the left side, is at 267 degrees. That's my EGT. Haven't figured out how to set the name, to change the name to EGT, but I know it's channel 1. But overall, it's a good install. I kept all the wiring underneath the dash so it wouldn't get wet or destroyed or anything, or heat underneath the engine compartment. So let's go with that. And right now we'll go drive around and see how hot it gets, and then later on hook up my trailer and car and go tow for a while and See what these EGTs get to. So stay tuned. So here's what it looks like on the highway. I haven't really seen it get too high. Right now, what's it, at 800? Doing 75 miles an hour. So not too bad, doesn't get too hot. Curious to see how hot it gets. Pulling a trailer, but I'm not going to be doing 75 miles an hour pulling. But these are your average temps. Goes down with the exhaust brake on. Sits right around like 700, 600. Gets up to 8 when you check back when we hook up the trailer and put a load to it. Well, I picked up the trailer, loaded the Mustang. Just go try to find some hills in Dallas. It's gonna be some fun times. Got my trusty sidekicks, 2 Frenchies. So let's go hit the road. We'll report back. There's our first acceleration. Find some more hills. Check back.
You can see the riding on the pavement. Young kids, they're growing up in basements. Online, a whole new generation. I'ma make mine, so you better go take it. Always, they need a new replacement. Decentralized, can't contain it. We're changing lives, yeah, upgrade it. Call it suicide of the older generation. Put a key to open eye, yeah. Make all the demons quiet.
Here's our first hill. It's like a 2% grade. First incline, one of 2, a whole 2% grade. There's a second incline, really struggling to get 900 above without accelerating. So really small hills around Dallas, Fort Worth area. Here's pretty much the last hill around. So we'll see how it does. You can even get to the 900 EGTs, but it's a struggle. This car is nothing for this truck, so sensor seems to be working pretty good. And I heard it could be like 200 to 300 degrees off, but so nothing too big of a difference compared to having it in the center of the turbo.